Welcome to the Healing Table. This is a space for real conversations about healing, masculinity, and emotional truth. Today, we're naming something many people live but rarely say out loud: showing up strong, smiling, leading, helping others heal, and then going home carrying that weight alone. This conversation is about healing in public and hurting in private. Not to fix it, not to perform it, but finally speaking truth to power about it. Let's get it. All right. Welcome back. We're at a healing table space. What's up, fellas? How we feeling today?
Look, love is good.
Busy, but good.
Good, brothers. Well, this is episode 4, y'all. Episode 4. We already have 3 episodes out there, and they're killing it. They're doing some great movement. We threw some great gems out there. We first spoke about Michael's book that will be released in January. Come on.
Yes.
And then we did Wounds We Inherited, a little deeper conversation within that father figure space and children, sons, but it went into different spaces. And then we had Emotional Tenderness, and speaking on those pieces. And today I had a few thoughts I wanted to talk about because, I'm Mr. Who's Helping You Heal.
That's right.
I was like, how do we go through this when, you're healing in public, hurting in private, when growth becomes performance? Thoughts, fellas?
The layering to this is it's quite complex, and I think there's a lot of nuance here. Right? There's frontline healthcare professionals, right? Rescue professionals, right? Emergency folks who, no matter what they got going on in their life, when they're on the job, you gotta go and perform, right? Military folks, you have to learn to perform under that. And so there's the performance needed for the role, and there's also you growing while doing that performance. And I think for me, that's sort of where the rubric is. I think because we don't necessarily have the tools, we get lost in, well, I'm growing in my career, so I must be growing as a person overall, right? I'm growing in my popularity, so I must be growing as a person. And that's not the same thing. It's the external validation of whatever you're doing does not mean you've grown in any way. And so I think that's why when you look at law enforcement or somebody and they got an alcohol problem or something like that, guys, it makes sense. That means they are not dealing with the stress of the job or the stress in their life in a way, but yet there's a expectation that they should be performing a job independent of those things. And what we know in the spectrum of human, some folks are better and worse at that, right? But the masking around that is huge. I think all of us have worked with somebody who we smell alcohol on their breath. And right, like, at least go gargle. And they just in your face like it's... They've learned how to perform with that mask, and because of whatever rank or title they're in, they've considered to whatever growth, right, that is, versus when you grow from the hurt in private, it changes you, which means that you, whoever was there, you can't show up the same way, right? And that's what you see where folks say, well, I'm dealing with this, and yet they're still on the bottle or still going to or still sort of in that bad behavior. Well, if you go in private and do that bad behavior, your performance is suffering more than you even know, because you've now numbed yourself that the only thing you can do is perform to the expectations of the job, which is what are the X's and O's that they've taught us, versus you evolving in your own thinking through how you perform the job. How do I get better at this, right? What am I seeing? Checking my own biases, all of those things. And so I think I want to be just sort of clear here in terms of there is the capability of people to perform a job, right? No matter how they are particularly feeling in a moment. But what we know on the whole is over time, performance is going to fall down. There's only so long you can carry all of this stuff that you're not healing from in private before it spills over into what people call your public life, but maybe it's just more external to the place you had been sort of confined it to. So I'm gonna pause there from a sort of what I feel like is leveling within this
Mhm.
tendency.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree with growth. There's so many different layers, and I kind of
Mhm.
read this backwards when growth becomes performance. And I was just like what instantly came to my spirit was like, that's gross. Like
Mm.
when
Mm.
your growth is performative, like instantly I'm like, you don't even know who you are. Because now you're playing the game with your life. And
Mhm.
like that's scary to me because performance is often judged by other people. And if your life's being judged based upon other people, they get to tell you how much you've grown and how much you haven't grown. Versus my growth isn't a performance. My growth is who I am. I get to determine how far I've came, my experiences, and everything that I've been through because I've only been me all the time. And so when you're talking about healing in public and hurting in private, one person you don't get to escape ever is you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yep.
in
Yep.
public and private all at the same time, all the time, so to speak. So either I'm driving the cart or I'm on the sideline watching, but it's still me. And oftentimes when we're in performance and we're in public, we want people to see that we've done so much work. If you're still wanting people to see how much work you've done, there's more work to do. Because truly healed people, my opinion, that's not doing performance, that's all about growth. You don't have to tell people how much you healed, they can see it. Better yet, they can feel it. Because when you come in the room, those old scars don't come with you. The same baggage isn't doesn't come with you. You walk
Yeah.
different. You ain't walking with a limp because you ain't carrying the things that used to weigh you down. I don't need to tell you that. You can feel that in how I talk and the energy that I give and how I give life to others.
Yeah. So if I could flow from that and adjacency, and again, as we talk about these different lanes, even when we think about the scenario of when growth becomes performance, there is a part of the game of capitalism that we have to perform in. We have to show the social currency. We have to show the digital footprints, right? I think so. We have to. So there's a part of the performance that even as we grow, I still need to think about how do I share with people, right? Because part of the communication story, the storytelling is talking about your journey and where you've gone and where you've come from, right? And there are people who see that as performance. So if I think about folks who the world criticized when they videotape them doing something for somebody else. Well, you should have just did. Well, how else do I get to inspire somebody else? Because then if I go and talk about it, y'all say I'm doing this for this, right? And so that gets into something you said, Mike, which is there's a part of being you that you got to separate from the noise, but at the same time, we still exist in this capitalist space. They're going, is Nair and Mike and Coach Adam, are they authentic? Right? How are they demonstrating their healing? Right? How are they showing up to here? Right? What are they doing here? Now, he didn't post about meditating. Is he no longer doing this anymore? Right? And so there's all of these things that they're not ours to solve for. But when we talk about growth and performance, there's a part of our growth, to your point, as we start to love ourselves in a deeper way, more, be kinder, and all of those things, and sort of these levels of depth, you already are now in a space where your growth is going to be under question
Mm.
because your energetic your elevation, all of this thing is now going to start to resonate different. Now if I go into another sort of lane here, when you're in a relationship with somebody and one of you is pouring into your healing and the other person is not, or you as you pour into your own healing, you got somebody you have to co-parent, right? Or multiple people you have to co-parent with. All the dynamics start to change in those. And some of those folks, you think you too good. Who do you think you are now? Just because you did this, right? Blah, blah. Like it's all of those things. So, and then as you all know, when it comes from healing, there is a part of, I don't want to call it performance, but it is performance under this definition of us taking the context of the situation into play. And that is when you go through your own growth, you can't go in the room talking high and mighty about what it means to heal. So you've got to be able to wrap your own self into, I know what it's like to not be in this space. So I have to meet them in that space. I'm not being less than or any of that, but I am acknowledging that, y'all, I know this shit is complicated. And that's why I said in this question that there are so many lanes, because depending on how you think about growth and performance, it's a little bit different. Athletes are expected to perform no matter how much they hurt, not even in their body. We still expect them to perform because folks will say, well, they're getting all this money. They should be doing all, like the expectations external. I think even when you look at this, you still need another lane to say, how do you handle this internally without any regard to the external environment, which is, how do I just check into myself? And then now now that I've checked into myself, how do I look at this through this entire ecosystem around me? And so if I sort of talk about that in 1 second and say what that looks like, that's me and my healing, being a father to a 5-year-old, recently turned 15-year-old, 17, 18, 22, 23, and sort of be at a space of being able to communicate what I can to each level group. Again, I don't know what's growth and performance in some ways because it's all living and I'm all trying to figure it out at the same time. And so there is a part before I become healed, and I don't think we should ever say the healed word, but there's a part of in healing because it is an active stage. I am actually trying to undergo, and I'm gonna drop this last line here, is am I demonstrating growth or am I still performing? Because that is part of the excavation that you've got to ask yourself every step of the way. So I think when you look at this question, there's just so many different spices by which you can sort of think about this and sort of come at it from a different way.
Coach, feelings, thoughts?
Yeah, I think you both mentioned it. Like this conversation can go in different lanes. So I'm going to go a little outer and inner. On the healing in public, hurting in private, I think of all these amazing leaders that I knew in my life that eventually became mentors to me in some degree, right? They were like great leaders, strong leaders, pillars of the community, people I truly look up to, that were just like, always asking me if I was good, those little things. And I just recall those same people as I got older and knew them more as adults, how much demons they had, how much hurt they had, but how much work they were doing on the outside. And a lot of them were from an older generation too. And we always talk about like lack of resources, the lack of, the knowledge of trauma and what's chasing me from the past, right? And is haunting me in my present. And I felt like those people that I'm specifically thinking of, and I can see their faces, man, they were doing so much healing in public. I mean, they were leading emergency services for tons of families in the Bucktown area of Chicago. They were just doing all these beautiful things, and they were the same ones that I know were going home, feeling lonely, hurt, suffering in silence. It makes me think of like the old days when families used to sit there and eat at a table and eat in silence. Right? Knowing it's an important time to actually talk as a family. But at that time, the best thing was you don't talk unless the dad talks or whatever it may be, right? Whatever the politics of that family or structure of the discipline that holds. What I'm saying is, I feel like a lot of those folks do that. They have meals in silence when they go home and they suffer in that silence. And when they come out of home, they don't show any of it. And so when I think of that, I think of those individuals and I think of how they continue to do that until they die, till they retire. Right. And then it makes me think a little bit, and this is probably because I told Bro, before we hopped on and before you came on, Mike, that I've been thinking about my mom's lately a lot. And I think about how she used to just heal a gang of people just by the way of her energy was, right? But how much she just was depressed. Like, and she was diagnosed depressed, right? And unhappy. And it just and this is a sidebar. It makes me think, and I've asked several many mothers lately that I've been working with. I don't want to know about the professional. I don't want to know about the spouse. I don't want to know about the mother. How's the person? Do you have
Yep.
joy? Right? And all of them have said to me, no.
No.
Right. So sidebar, that's a sidebar, right? But what I say when I'm thinking the healing in public, hurting in private, that's where my thoughts go. I'm gonna go into the inner now real quick. When growth becomes performance, I think about myself, y'all. So this is a humbling moment because I had to really think about this when Grow was saying what he was saying and Mike, what you were saying. I think about my time when I ran camps and I had so much pride. I pride myself on running camps that look like children that came from the neighborhoods. I pride myself in the
Mm-hmm.
staff. I pride myself if you don't want to be here to change children's lives, you can get the fuck out. I pride myself in a lot of things in that space. And not that I'm saying I was performative, but I also pride myself on my story and maybe used it to an angle too much in my post reflection,
Mhm.
right? I had a fucked up story. I was homeless as a teen, right? I went through a lot of shit. And there was many houses in Wilmette, Illinois that I went to talk about that. Because every time I went and talked about that, something elevated at my camp. We got
Mm.
something new. Some board member donated something. And it makes me think of that. And selfishly, because I'm pointing at myself, right? And I think of like, it was growth for me to know where I want to be and where I don't want to be because I did not feel comfortable in those houses, especially speaking about my story, because I didn't feel like they deserved to hear it. But then I was sitting there and saying, but what about the foster care children who are coming to my camp who need me?
Mm.
In this space of wanting to grow, and I did grow. Don't get me wrong, I grew like a mug. I learned many things in my camp world and my dynamics of working with families and foster care systems and all that stuff. Like I learned a lot. But yeah, when I think of those moments where I got sent to those homes and things like that, and they're sitting on these big ass plushy couches just watching me, and I feel like I'm on a stage. That's where that performance feeling comes in.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, no, well,
Oh,
a couple of
go ahead,
things.
Mike.
Come on.
Like well, one, thank you for sharing. Both things resonate with me deeply. And the first thing I'll say, it when I first talked, I made it. I need to apologize, listeners, viewers, to y'all. I think I made it seem like it's either or, and that wasn't my intent. It can be both and. And I think Grow talked about that. Sometimes we gotta perform because lives are at stakes. You had babies at your camp that
Got to get through this moment.
needed that. And so do I need if I need because I grew, I know how to perform in this era. I can share my story in order to make sure they don't have to go through the same thing that I went through. Like that, I think that's growth within itself, even though there's some
Yep.
performance in that. And
Yep.
when I'm looking at this again, Adam, you talk about your mom. I always think about my grandma. Every time you say your mom, I say grandma in my head.
Mhm.
Hey,
And
grandma.
I see healing in public and hurting in private. Like, what's the common denominator for both of those? Is either you're trying to find joy or it's the lack of joy. And so when you say, "Are you happy?" and you're talking like is the person happy? And the answer is no. I think that's a good measurement if you're healing or not. If you're doing the work or not is like how's your joy meter? Does it have the opportunity to grow or is it trending downwards or is it trending upwards? And I think that's important. I put a post into a couple of days ago that talked about joy, and even in Easy Equity, my book, I say it's a chapter. It says find joy, and then after that it says find it. Like joy isn't an option. I need people not to make joy a choice. Like joy is what is like air. Like it's you can't live without it. And if we're trying to heal and do all these other things with the absence of joy, that's performance. When you don't smile and you go to work and you just perform a job and there's no joy, there's no passion, there's no heart behind it. Once again, sometimes you do have to perform. You need money, you need checks and things like that. But if we're talking about living life in a way that's going to break historical harm, joy has to be the center of that, which goes to what you're talking about with you and camps and your stories. And uh, I kind of heard you kind of say, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of gaslighting yourself, so to speak, saying like, I've been through all this stuff, but my story reached so many houses, not the houses to change lives, but the houses to make other people feel good about their lives because they're donating money to this camp.
Mm-hmm.
And and like I'll say this, Adam, like we how would I say this? We we talk about this all the time. I don't think I'm gonna say this differently. What I see in you and your dopeness is unmeasurable. Period. As Adam Perez, the person, the coach, and I would tell this to everybody. We have to understand when we know who we are. This world isn't built to understand how big we are. So when Growfessor's talking about the hate and all this other stuff, like we have to understand that this world isn't built to understand our dopeness, to understand our strength, to understand our depths in all these different layers. So when we start healing and we start pouring into ourselves, when we leverage our superpowers, when we know who we are, the world, society wasn't built to contain that. And so then they're going to do all of the things to invite you to performance. What we have to understand, well, I've encouraged people to understand your strength and how big you are isn't a weakness. And you don't have to act big because you are big. And when you can recognize that you already inherently are all that you need to be, you can walk in a different strength of healing because you're no longer carrying those things that no longer serve you. And you can walk in this space of, I'm just going to say, enlightenment, because you can get through anything that you're ever going to go through because you are you. And when you're able to walk like that, you're going to get haters, you're going to get all this stuff, but it don't even matter because you know who you are.
Yeah, I think, Coach, I appreciate the vulnerability that for you to share that story, particularly in the part where you talk about. I think your words were, I think I told my story too much to the point that it felt performative, right? And so for me, there's a space where this is what I mean by growth and performance. You telling your story was a part of the healing process because you now are starting to take ownership of it. As you starting to take ownership of your story and tell it, you're seeing these other lanes where people are sort of finding and going, hey, we can use this person telling this story while they have whatever motives they have. You being in the room to tell your story, the value proposition is that no matter what their intent is around the room, you are now giving a lived experience. And anytime we can show a lived experience, there's something good that's going to come out of it. Because, Coach, you said that. You said every time I did it, though, something good came out of it in sort of this thing, right? So that means you didn't tell it enough, or you certainly didn't tell it too much, right? Because if good things happen. And so, in the space of us being us, in being beings, growth and performance are tied together. So if I put this in the natural space, we understand in the animal kingdom that cubs are taught how there's a part where they're playful, there's a part when they go on a hunt and they can't do anything, there's a part where they trying to figure out how to chew and where to bite. There's a part, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they as a part of the growth, they will almost kill something, and so the kid and they have to do the right. Again, there's growth and performance at the same time. So to get to something that I said, and I think something that I think we're making clear here, which is when you own your growth, when you start to pour into your growth, you start to have a clear sense of whether or not you are displaying the attributes of your growth, or are you performing to the room? And what we fundamentally are saying here, the two can be intertwined so much to the point in the growing process, because in healing, while I may be working on my communication here, I still am suffering somewhere else in the process. None of us are healed to the point we are all healed at some level in all the aspects, because at every step, there's a different set of injuries, a different set of perspective, and the traumas and all the things we went through that we have to give ourselves space for. And so there's a part of this comment that really gets into the space of we're such a socialized space to sort of perform towards society, because that's all that statement is about. Because at the end of the day, to everything that Mike said, we're sovereign in our existence. Like nobody can take that away from us. So if I decide to have joy in this moment, y'all can't fucking take that away from it. I'm gonna be joyous in this moment. And so, but we've been in a space where when you are born, people tell you what you can and can't feel. What you smiling for in this moment? Well, I felt like it was funny. If somebody trip and fall in front of you, if the humor part of you says funny, folks will judge you based on that. Again, I'm just being, there's a natural split reaction. Now we've got to sort of catch a split reaction. Now growth and performance are really at play, because now you're telling me to catch my body's natural response to something that happens in real time. Now, how alert and sensitized do I got to be on that? Nobody got time to be walking around eggshells in the being of us. So in growth and performance, they're not these things that are mutually exclusive or unintertwined. They are literally on this continuum that you may be growing here, but you are performing someplace else here. And those are happening all at the same time, just like the person who knows that they're going through a divorce and yet need to show up and teach these kids about Africana studies, right? Or here's the healing methodology of X, right? Those two are true. But what we know, though, is that if that person isn't getting the support that they need in that space, the spillover in your performance is impossible to not have, right? Something eventually is going to carry over, because something's going to hit a button that's already on high alert over there, right? And now you find yourself where even though you was trying to grow over here, you're still dealing with this and you're still trying to perform here. You are still only one being, and you will always be one being. So even when you're a performance, whatever hurt you're carrying is with you. Wherever you're growing, the hurt that's still there, that's unresolved, is still there as well too, right? These things are not these things where, let me go stick this pain on the wall while I go over here and do this. No, it is with you. And we have to sort of see it from the space that it is in our lived experience. We are experiencing while we're living on a continuum.
Yeah. I'm gonna say one quick thing, coach, and then I'll give it to you. Like my spirit's telling me to tell all the men out there, just like Gro said, your pain comes with you. So even when you think you're hiding it, it's still visible.
Yes.
And so that pain doesn't have to define you. You could define what that pain is. And when you name what that pain is, you can start to heal. And I think that is a revolutionary act when a man heals. And when a man heals, the world becomes better. Everything around him becomes better. I believe that there's somebody out there that doesn't believe that they're deserving of healing, doesn't know how to heal, or doesn't know where to start. And my advice would be, one, you deserve to heal. You know more than what you think. And your first step is to take a breath and say something nice about you, because that's healing within itself. And when men come together, I think about that man that you said, Adam, that heals the community and comes home and hurts in silence.
Yeah.
I wonder what he could have done or she could have done if they were healing in private and then went out into the community. I wonder how many more souls they could have touched. Not saying that what they were doing was bad then, but I imagine when you pour into yourself, and so that's my ask, for some of our viewers and things like that. Like, slow down, take a breath, and let your journey start. Like, we always think that we want to be so far ahead in our journey, but the first important, most equitable step is how you love you in starting. Be willing to be a fool and heal wrong, then you can heal right. So go out there and make some mistakes and try. And I'll let uh
I
smiling
want
Coach
to pick up.
Adam.
Got something else. Come
I
on,
want to
bro.
pick. I want to pick up on the naming part, and I've read this a lot where you're supposed to name something in terms of, for me,
Mhm.
naming something in a lot of ways is a lot superficial on the surface,
Mm.
because then we start to attach to these names, and we love to attach to a name of something. One of the things I would encourage into that revolutionary act that you talked about, Mike, in healing, is not just to name it, but to understand how your body feels when you
Mm,
think of that word. Because I need you to understand that is it in your stomach? Do you start to get headaches? Like, do your shoulders get tight? I want you to pay attention to what's happening in your body, because if I start to recognize how my body is feeling, I don't got to name nothing to get active. And so now I don't got nothing to attach to. And I think in healing, part of healing is for us not to attach for stuff. And we love to name something, because now that we've named it, now we got a badge of honor to carry. And I'm trying to get us out of that badge of honor of carrying shit that don't serve us, and turning our mind into recognizing the symptoms that we have. For whatever crazy reason, we have these senses, but we have the least amount of education on how to leverage these our own senses, right,
Mm.
to ourselves, other than, oh, I know this food tastes good. But right, we can't necessarily identify a non-organic fruit from a non-fruit, right? Because we're so fast in what we eat. So, but we don't know how our body feels when we eat certain fruits from this store versus that store, or if I get something that says organic versus not. We don't pay attention and start to connect those dots. And so, but before we name it and then try to Google everything about the name, one of the things you still didn't do in naming it is figure out what the hell is going on in your body before you get to naming it. And I want us to, in that revolutionary part, start to pay attention to our body speaking to us, because there's something, Mike, you said earlier, it is always with us wherever you're doing. You can't ever leave it, no matter what you got going on.
Mm. First, man, I really appreciate both of you brothers, and I appreciate this healing table. Just want to say that real quick. I really feel like when we come together, and y'all both said this in other segments, but when we come together, I think just our thoughts, right? There might be some different alignment, but they eventually cross each other, and that's the beautiful part when they cross each other.
Yeah.
I want to land my thoughts in this segment on the healing in public, hurting in private, because I feel like we really drove that when growth becomes performance. Y'all killed it all over, and we did hit the other one, but I'm gonna go ahead and put the mirror back on myself and also extend, like Mike did, some advice to to the fellas out there who are going in that space of healing in public and hurting in private. And in this one, for many years, as I served people in communities, I felt like I was doing a lot of healing. I was loving people. They wanted the energy. They wanted the camp experience. They wanted the retreats. They wanted every part of me. And I gave them every part. Every ounce, every fucking drop.
Mm.
Because I knew I was giving it to people who really deserved it. And when you're giving it to people who deserve it, that shit comes pretty easy. But I was also not recognizing what I deserved. And what I deserved was the amount of healing I was letting out. I also had to let in. So I'm looking at the folks and the men out there who are sitting in that space, who are doing a gang of great work out in the front. But when they go back to the crib or they go back to their safe haven, they utilize that safe haven as a space of almost death.
Mm.
Mourning.
Oh,
You don't need to mourn. There's nothing to mourn. Every person you serving out there, and I had to say this to myself, so I'm going to say it again. Every person I knew I was serving out there was going to always remember the things I've done for them, because not of the camp experience, getting their kids so they can go on a vacation, all that. That was the caveats. What it was that I was showing up for them. And what I needed to do was start showing up for myself, because in private, I wasn't doing that. So I ask you, brothers and sisters, we have both of y'all listening to us, in that space where you're doing all this amazing work outward, you deserve that work inward. You deserve everything that you give out in healing to the community, to the people you love, all that emotion, all that integrity, all that shit you give in alignment, all that shit you pride yourself, because if you even miss a piece of it, you're like, I didn't serve them right. You need to grab all that energy and shift it to yourself. Thank you for sitting with us at the healing table. If this conversation stayed with you, let it. Healing doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means you stop performing strength and start being honest. This table exists for reflection, for men's healing, and for breaking silence. If you saw yourself in this conversation, you're not alone. You were never meant to carry it by yourself.